Great. Thanks, Shalise. All right. So, sorry, I just got an update, of course. All right. Yeah. So, as Shalise mentioned, yeah, Excel today. We're going to kind of build off of what Debbie presented a few days ago. And again, like I mentioned, that training, this is going to be pretty similar to what I presented a few months back as kind of part of my using Qualtrics for evaluation basics course. So it'll be a bit of a repeat, which isn't a bad thing. If you were at that one, it's always good to hear things a few times so you can kind of reinforce those Excel skills. But yeah, today's really for you guys. So I have a few basic skills that I want to cover, but after that, or in conjunction with that, please ask questions, please pop questions in the chat and we'll kind of answer those as they come up. But if it's something that I'm showing you that you really don't get or you really have a further question on, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that. And so to me, it looks like Carol is wearing a lighthouse as a hat. The way that your background is set. Is everybody else seeing that? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so I don't see that because it's very distracting. All right, so let us get into it. All right, so again, we're going to just cover, I broke it down into kind of 6 skills. So nothing too crazy. We're going to, again, 3 kind of more basic skills and then 3 a bit more advanced skills, but these are all kind of within the realm of slightly advanced, but still pretty simple. So the 3 basic skills, we'll talk about how to do math. So how to add cells together, how to subtract cells, how to multiply cell values together, and how to divide cell values. We're going to talk about just the basic sum function. Of all the functions, of all the formulas that are available in Excel, sum is probably the simplest. Literally just going to add up rows of data. And then kind of the next group that's also very helpful, but very simple are things like average, median, minimum values and maximum values of a data set. So we'll talk a lot about functions today. And again, Excel has, at this point, probably, I don't know, hundreds, if not 1,000 functions at this point. And functions are just kind of mathematical equations that Excel can do for you. And that can be as advanced or as simple as you want to. You can do really great data analysis that's pretty serious with Excel. Or you can literally just add 2 cells together and get a value. So it can be as basic or as advanced as you need it to be, which is why it's so great. And then our 3 advanced skills, we're going to talk about kind of the family of count functions. So we're going to use those to do some basic frequencies and proportions out of a data set. We're going to use find and replace, which Debbie covered a couple days ago, but we're going to use it today to sort of code some data. So we're basically going to take like data that is in word form and turn it into numbers so we can do some stuff with it. And then finally, we'll kind of wrap up with using if-then statements, which is an awesome and simple way of maybe taking a sort of a data set of continuous data, so maybe like numbers, from 0 to 100, and turning those into categories. So you can easily sort of at a glance kind of see what you're looking at. So those are the 6 things that we're going to cover. And again, anything else that you guys have questions about. I am going to possibly end early if at all possible. So we do have some time for some Q&A afterwards. And if not, I'm always available if you need to come talk to me. All right. So here is the data set that we're going to kind of dive into today. And again, this is data from last year from Ohio for our Dining with Diabetes program. And this is data that participants of that program fill out evaluations. They fill out an evaluation before the class, after the 4 sessions of the class, and then down the road in a follow-up. And so in this data set, there's probably 150 columns of data. And then last year we had, what did we have? 162 people in this class. So a ton of data. And I use Excel just to break it down and to process it and to create reports that help educators and help funders to take a look at this stuff and kind of find out what benefits the program had. So before we dive into it, let's go ahead and take a look at the actual survey questions. So this is in Qualtrics, of course. So, you might have a Qualtrics, survey where you're asking questions that are similar to this. and you might find some commonalities in sort of how to process your surveys today. So we have a lot of open-ended questions, which is pretty straightforward. But we also have a lot of sort of these multiple choice questions that we can use Excel to sort of aggregate for us. So in this program, we ask 7 questions that are scored. So there are actually right answers and wrong answers to these questions. So we're going to show you kind of how to score questions and how to add up scores to get a final score in Excel, which is very helpful. We also ask questions like these, frequency questions. So on how many days did you do something? Or how frequently do you do something? So these are kind of really basic frequency questions that you guys might ask in your work as well. Also things like agree and disagree questions. So we ask these of hundreds of people, and we might want to know, what percentage agreed, what percentage disagreed. How do we do that in Excel? So we'll show you that as well. How often do you eat these following foods? And again, so up here we have what? We have days of the week, right? We have 0 days to 7 days. We can easily use that data. If somebody, let's see, exercised 2 days a week before the class, at the end of the class, they're up to 5 days a week. That person obviously exercises 3 more days a week. That's an improvement. That's a behavioral improvement. And we can use Excel to subtract those values together. This kind of a question is harder, right? So we have a scale of never to always. So how do we subtract frequently from rarely, right? Like we can't really do that. So we need to code those values into numbers, and we'll show you how to do that today. We also get demographic values. So things like ages, things like genders. We can use the count function to count how many people said Black or African American, how many people said Asian, and those kind of things. So lots of stuff. Here we ask their A1C level. I'm not a clinician, but A1C is a percentage of sugar percentage carried by hemoglobin in the blood, something along those lines. Don't quote me, obviously. So that is a valuable tool to find out if somebody can drop their A1C level over the course of a class. And we can subtract their post-class value from their pre-class value and see if they went down or up or stayed the same. And then our post survey is exactly the same. So we were able to do that. All right, so that's kind of the lay of the land, the kind of questions that we have in our survey. And those are all laid out here. So what I've done is I've kind of pulled out little bits and pieces to make it a little bit simpler to follow along. So we'll be kind of going back to some of those items that I showed earlier. All right, so the first skill we talked about is this idea of just kind of adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. This may be really basic for you, but if it is, just kind of bear with me and we'll get to the more advanced stuff. Or for some of you, this could be the first time you've seen this. But either way, this is kind of the absolute foundation of Excel. So if you don't know, Excel is organized in columns, so which are designated by letters, and rows, which are designated by numbers. And here we have 2 data sets. We have column A and column B. These could be anything. These are just random numbers that I made up. So these could be test scores. So somebody got a 77%, maybe a solid C, and then went down to a C minus later on. Or these could be dollar values, right? These could be like column A is one group of students who are doing a fundraising campaign, and this is the stuff that they sold. And then column B is a different group of students, perhaps, or it's 2 points in time. It really could be anything, but the point is we're going to subtract one from the other and see what happens. All right, so I'm going to click on this cell right here. This plus sign designates this is where we're going to do I'm going to do some addition. So I'm literally going to add column A and column B together to get the answer. So in Excel, if you don't take anything else home from this today, remember that to write a formula in Excel, you want to use the equal sign. So the equal sign lets Excel know that you are about to write a formula. No matter how simple or complex, you have to start there. In this case, I'm going to add A and B. So literally, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select cell A2, which is my 77, right? And then I'm going to throw in a plus sign because I want to add it to something. And then I'm going to select cell B2. And then I'm going to hit the return key. And it adds those two together and gets me 148, which is of course the answer. So that's literally it. You can add as many cells as you want together, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But this is the basics. You basically just, once you hit equals, you have engaged the formula writing thing. So if I just go over here and hit A2, it just kind of follows around where my crosshairs are. But as soon as I hit the equal sign and I pick A, and then I hit plus, and then I hit B2, and then I hit enter, B3, and then I hit enter. There we go. And of course, I'm adding stuff linearly, but you can add things that wherever you want, right? So if I needed to for some crazy reason, I could do, let's say I want to add A9 and I want to add B5 plus A9. And that answer is 138. So you can add them. We tend to do things linearly and horizontally, right? But you can do whatever you want. All right, now I want to copy this formula into all these cells. So I could type them all in by hand, but that's of course extra work. So I'm going to go down here to this little square in the bottom right-hand corner of my cell. I'm going to hover over that. My little crosshairs turn black, and I basically click it and hold it down and drag it all the way down, and then I let go. And it transfers that formula all the way down to all those cells. All right, so that's it. That's addition. As you may have guessed, subtraction is the same thing, but with a different symbol. So A2 minus B2, and I get 6. And then same thing, I'm just going to hover over here, click and hold down, of course. Click and hold down and drag it all the way down, and it gives me the subtraction. Now, if you don't realize this, Excel is very smart, and it always kind of thinks ahead of the user. So, so this is obviously A2 minus B2. I just drug this down, and Excel, if you can see up here in the formula bar, it immediately changed that to A3 minus B3. So it knows that I want to keep the formula the same. So it drops it down, keeps the format the same, and subtracts the cells that are just in the next row. And that is very smart, because if it didn't do that, then your math would be off. All right, let's go ahead and multiply these. So again, A2, and again, the multiplication in Excel is done with the asterisk. It's not the X. So we're also going to just grab this and drag this down. And then now we have the A column cell and the B column cell multiplied together. And finally, we'll do some quick division. And again, division is the /. Hit enter, and there we go. All right, so at this point, let's go ahead and take our first lesson in cell formatting. So this is giving me 1,000,000 decimal points. I think that's kind of a bit excessive. So I only want to see one decimal place in this case. So I need to format cells. The easiest way that I like to format cells is to basically right click. So like many programs in the Microsoft suite, when you right click, you get a little mini menu of stuff. And the one that you will use the most often is the format cells, which is down here. So let's take a walk through format cells. So you have some options here. This is where you can change the format of a number, which we're going to do in a second. You can change the alignment of a cell. So if you want it centered or top or bottom or right justified or left justified. You can also do things like wrap text. You can shrink the text to fit in a cell. You can merge cells together. You can also change your font. You can change your border style. You can fill it with colors, or you can lock a cell down with protection. You can do all these things, of course, up here in the ribbon as well, which Debbie alluded to in her training. But I find this little menu box pretty slick. All right, so I am going to format that column into numbers. And right here is where I can find my decimal places. So I'm going to just knock it down to 1 decimal place. That's good enough for me for this application, and hit enter. And so I have a much tidier little column. All right, so that is the absolute basics of math in Excel. And so you can, this opens up a whole bunch of stuff. So if you needed to do, any kind of just basic mathematics, this is where you would write these formulas. All right, let's talk about the sum function, kind of our second skill. So now we're getting into actual like formulas. So let's say that, again, I have column A and column B. Let's say this is a troop of Girl Scouts, and each row is a different scout, and the number is how many boxes of cookies they sold. So I want to find out how many boxes of cookies troop A sold versus troop B, and see who won the grand prize or whatever. So so one way to do that, what we just learned, I literally could do equals. I could do what? I could do A2 plus B2 plus C2 plus D2. I could do that the whole way down. But that's obviously not what we're going to do. We're going to use our first function of the day. All right, so functions. You have two ways to do this. One is the manual way, and one is kind of the pre-packaged way. So the function that we're looking for is called sum. And so I'll show you the manual way, and then we'll go look for it in the formula package. So once again, always equal sign. And then functions, they all have names. So as soon as I hit S, I get a whole menu of functions that begin with S. This is Excel trying to autofill what I want to do. So as you can see, the function sum is one of the ones that they're offering. So the great thing is that yeah, it kind of gives you the ones that are kind of most commonly used first. All right, so here is what we're going to do. So the great thing about Excel, when you type a function out, it gives you a little gray bar underneath your cell, and it kind of hints at what it needs to do the function for you, right? So if you look, this says sum, parentheses, number 1, comma, number 2, comma, number 3, comma, number 4, end parentheses. So it's asking for the range of numbers that you want to sum up. So I'm going to literally left click, and I'm going to drag down, I'm going to highlight all these cells, and then I'm going to let go. So as you can see, A2 colon A11. So colon indicates a range basically. And so it's now going to sum up all the cells, including A2 all the way to A11. I'm going to do a closed parenthesis, and I'm going to hit return. And there's the answer. So the sum of this column is 575. And then if I wanted to, I could just literally grab this and drag it over here and check it out. All right, so the cells are changing because I did a random number generator formula, and it's always kind of updating and changing itself in the background. So don't worry about that. The important part is writing the formulas. All right, so right now we have 536 and 559. So Troop B sold $559 or no, boxes, which is more than A. So yeah, that's sum. So let's go ahead and show you how to use the formula ribbon. So up top here, again, we have all these different sort of packages of functions. Click on formulas, and you get all these options. So if you notice, the first one is kind of insert function. And if we click on that, over on the far right side, possibly underneath your video of for your video for Zoom, you get a formula builder. So formula builder is great if you are a bit uneasy about your functions. So I'm gonna have it search for sum, and it's giving me sum, and it's giving me literally what it does and what the different parts are to it. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm going to hit insert function, and it's gonna drop a sum function right into that cell and immediately do it. And if you notice what it did, it put a sum function in A, B, C, D, E, and F, because it figures, hey, you're going to want to do that for all these columns. So again, this is Excel thinking ahead a little bit, figuring out what you probably want to do. We didn't want to do that in this case, but it's fine for now. All right, so that's sum. Super easy. It's a way to add up a whole bunch of values very quickly. All right. So let's move on to the next idea. And this is this idea of using these math functions to do some scores. So we're going to close our formula builder. All right, so what we have here is we have, I mentioned in our diabetes program, we asked 7 questions that are actually scored right or wrong, or a range of values. So some of these things are like, here's 5 things, pick the 3 that are correct. So they can get a score of like 0 to 5, basically. And so here are participants. We've got like 20 participants over here, and here are their scores on the pretest. So for example, the first question is, which food raises blood sugar levels the most? And they get like 4 options. And here are their answers. The correct answer is a small apple. So if they answered a small apple, they get 1 point. If they answered anything else, they get 0 points. So you can see all these are scored in these sort of yellowish beige columns. So now what I want to do is I want to get a total score for each participant, right? So I want to know out of 27 possible points, how many points did they get? So I want to add up their score for question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So to do that, we literally obviously do an equals, pick the first question, and then we just go through and add their answer to question 2, add question 3, add question 4, 5, 6, and 7. So right there, we're now adding up their score on those seven questions. And as you can see, Excel nicely puts a little colored rectangle around each of those things that you're putting into your formula. And I'll hit return. So participant A scored 21 points out of 27, which is pretty good for the pretest. And like we've done elsewhere, we're going to go ahead and we're going to just drag this all the way down and copy that formula for everybody. And there you go. So now we have pretest scores for every person in that class, just by doing a little bit of basic addition. All right. So yeah, let's move on to the next kind of the last basic skill of our 3. This is just another list of random ages, of random data. In this case, it happens to be ages by in years. And so let's say you have a class and you have a whole bunch of people in it and you want to find out some basic statistics about their ages. So I'm going to know who the youngest person was, who the oldest person was, the average age, and the median age, because I'm curious about who came to my class. So we're literally going to insert functions that are called those different things. So I'm going to do them by hand, but as always, you can find them in the insert functions area. So you know what, I might as well just make this a little bit bigger. All right, so you can put these formulas anywhere, right? You can put them like over here. You can put them over here. In general, I think it's nice to do functions in line with or next to your data set, so it kind of makes it a bit clearer. I even like doing things like putting in like barriers so I don't get confused. So I'll put like a gray bar in, and the gray bar, like everything above it is just raw data, everything below it is like formulas, just kind of out of a habit. All right, let's find the minimum value. Who is the youngest person in this? So again, equal sign. As you might guess, we are going to just put min. And then it's telling us what it wants. It wants the range of ages, right? So we're going to grab this age range, and we're going to double check it. Yep, all good. And then we're going to hit enter. All right, so the youngest person who came to my class was 51. Again, this is only 20 people. I could look at that and find that out. But if you have a data set with like lots of values, that is a really quick way to find out the minimum value. All right, let's go ahead and find the oldest person, or the maximum value, right? Again, it could be dollars, it could be lengths, it could be weights, it could be anything really, right? All right, so max value, A2 to A21 again, hit return. Oldest person was 84. Let's find the average age. So literally it's called average. Open parenthesis, grab the range again, and hit return, and 66.9. Since all of our ranges are the same, the last is median. So type in median. So I literally could write this myself, right? So I'm not going to go highlight the range. I'm going to type in A2 colon A21 and just do it by hand, and then hit enter. All right, median age 64.5. And just like that, I have a really nice kind of glimpse at the ages of the folks who came to my program. All right, so that is that. I'm going to let's show one more thing with this simple data set before we kind of get into the more challenging stuff. And that is the use of dollar signs in our formulas. All right, so let's say, so back to this, I found the minimum value. I want to now find the maximum value, which we just did, but I typed it in by hand. I would rather just copy this cell and change the formula because the range is the same, right? So why keep typing the range in? Why keep going up and selecting the range? I want to actually grab this and pull it down. And I want to type in max. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I got the maximum value. But something bad just happened. So if you don't know this, we know Excel's smart, right? So we know Excel, when I pull a cell down, Excel is going to also move that entire range down one cell along with me because it's smart. But in this case, I don't want it to do that because now it just moved the entire range. What I wanted to do is I wanted to lock the range in and stay the same. And I just want to change the function, right? So the cool thing is I got a little error sign. So it also knows, it's like, hey, I think you want to do this, but I might be wrong. So whenever you get a little exclamation point, it's worth it to check that out. And the hint it's giving me is the formula refers to a range that has additional numbers adjacent to it. Basically saying that, by the way, you have this formula that's next to your range and the one above it didn't have that. So you might want to check this out. So sure enough, my range is A2 to A21, right? When I pulled this down, my range now went to A3 to A22. Uh-oh. So now it dropped an entire cell. So I lost the 75 and this blank is now part of my range. So if I were to keep doing that, it would be pretty catastrophic. So I need to tell Excel to lock in the range. And I do that using the dollar sign. So when I go up to here to my little formula bar, I can see exactly what's in it. If I throw a dollar sign in right before the number, there, can you see that? So now the range is $2 to $21. So the dollar sign essentially locks in the 2 and the 21. And so this doesn't change at all. But now when I drag it down, let's drag it down 4 times. And I check those formulas. Yep, A2 to A21, A2 to A21, A2 to A21. So now I can come in here and I can maybe change this to what, max? And I can change this one to average. And I can change this one to median, right? Yep, unless I just, I forgot the end. So there you go. So that's a lot faster than going back up and highlighting them. I mean, 20 values is one thing. If you have a data set with 1,000 things in it, you don't want to keep highlighting 1,000 things over and over again. So using the dollar sign is important. One more caveat, you can also put the dollar sign in front of the letter. So that locks in the row as well. So let's say I wanted to write this formula over here for some reason. So if I didn't put the dollar sign in front of the A, then it would move everything to this F column, and that would be F2 to F21, which is not what I want in this case. But because I put it in front of the A, it has totally locked in the row and the column. And so now I can take this formula and I can put it wherever I want. I can put it on a whole new spreadsheet if I wanted to. Not a file, but a whole new sort of worksheet down here. All right, so I need to get that out because that's very important, because once you start kind of pulling cells and copying cells, you could make a huge mess very quickly if you're not aware of what you're doing. All right. So let's look at the next kind of thing I wanted to show you guys. This is kind of our first advanced skill. It's a function family called count. So you have count, you have count A, you have count if, you got a bunch of things. Basically, all that does is it goes and it just you tell what to go look for, and it counts how many times that appears in your data range. Super simple. So what we have here, we have two questions. You saw this in the survey. You know, how often do you eat 3 servings of dairy in a day, and how often do you eat sugary beverages in a day? So obviously, we want folks to eat 3 servings of dairy more often, and we want them to drink sugary beverages less often. So we want to see kind of this get more frequent and this get less frequent as the class goes on, pre-test and post-test, right? So let's say I want to share a table. Hey, how many folks? What percentage said rarely? What percentage said always? So I could literally go in here and count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and write it down. But again, if you have hundreds of these values, you're going to want to write a function for it. All right, so we'll throw this in here. All right, so we want it to go up to this range. We want to count. Let's do never first, right? So again, formula, and we're going to do the count. So here are all the count options that you have. We are going to do count if, which is pretty self-explanatory. So count if this item is there, or this thing is true. So again, it says it wants to count if, give it a range, and then a comma, and then the criteria. Pretty simple, right? So the range, A2 to A17, and then a comma, and now it wants the criteria. So what's our criteria? We're doing never, right? So whenever you want to look for something, and it's like a definitive word or a phrase or a value, you want to use the parentheses. So we want it to look for parentheses. So we're doing never. Never. All right, so that's our function. So now in this range, it's going to count anything if it says never, which gives us 3. We'll double check. There's 1, there's 2, and there's 3. Great. All right, awesome. We should probably do that for the rest of them, right? So I'm going to do my little trick I just showed you. We'll throw a $sign in and lock in the range. So the 3 doesn't change, but now I have a formula. So we've got rarely, sometimes, frequently, and always. All right, so now I have 5 formulas all copied. Now all I have to do is go in, and all I have to do is change the condition, right? So let's see, rarely is the next most frequent thing, 5 of those. Next most frequent is what, sometimes? Great. Next most frequent is frequently. And finally, the word is always. There you go. All right, so now I know how many times those answers were given by this group of people. So again, super useful. If you have a data set of, 4-H families, and you want to look for a certain characteristic and find out how many have that, or how many live in a certain zip code, or how many of them ordered the GOAT project book, or whatever it is, you can use this function to go and count those things without having to go through and maybe sort everything or filter everything or whatever it is to look for those kind of things. All right, so how about let's find the percentage. Why not, right? So I want to basically divide this number by the total number of responses. Super simple. So how do I know how many responses there were? Well, I could count, right? It looks like there are, 16. But again, always beware of blanks, right? So you can't always assume that everybody answered everything. So you're going to want to count how many responses you have in each column. So I'm going to throw in, let's do this. Okay, so we're going to use a different count function called count A. Count A is very useful. It literally counts a cell if it's not blank. So that is a good way to find out how many responses you have, or how many answers you have, or whatever it is. So I'm just going to, there's no criteria. It's literally going to count what's not blank. So there are 16 cells that have something in them, right? That's great. And so now I have 16 responses, and I have these many responses per selection. So now I'm literally going to divide 3 by 16, 5 by 16, 2 by 16, et cetera, and get a percentage, right? All right, so let's go back to our division formula. So let's see, I'm going to go grab, this is what, never? So there were 3 nevers, and I'm going to divide that by the total responses. Super simple. And that's going to give me 0.1875. So basically 19% of people in this class answered never on the pretest for the question about eating dairy products. All right, I'm going to drag this down 4 more times, but I really want to keep this 16 because if I start dragging it, it's going to move that number also, right? And that's bad news. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in this A25. All right, and then I'm going to just grab this and pull it down a few more times. And there we go. All right, so these are the proportions of people who answered those different things. So just keep it straight. That was what? Never, rarely, sometimes, frequently, and always. All right. So because I have this all done for column A, I want that exact same thing for column B. So now I'm going to grab all those formulas, and I'm going to pull them over to column B. And it is going to keep everything in order and just move it from A's to B's. So here we go. There we go. So this is the question about drinking sugary beverages. So now we have the same proportions for this question. So that is good, except there we go. Okay. So the one major difference, if you noticed, there are 16 answers over here. This person didn't answer this question, so it's blank. So when I counted, it only found 15 responses, which is great. Because if this was 16, you don't have 16 responses, you only have 15. So you want to make sure that you're dividing by the right number and that your denominator is correct. All right, lastly, these are decimals, which are crazy looking. So let's change these to percentages. So I'm going to highlight all these cells that I want to make percentages. And I'm going to right click and go into format cells. So in format cells, again, we saw all these different categories. I'm going to pick the percentage category. And again, I think 1 decimal place is enough for me, and we'll hit OK. And now we have percentages. So very nice, right? So now if you were reporting this out to somebody or looking at it for your data purposes, or maybe you taught the first class and this is your pretest and you're looking at this and you're thinking, all right, we don't have, most of our people, 56% or so, either never or rarely drink sugar sweetened beverages. That's great. So we know that as a fact. If you had maybe like 80% that always drank that, then you might want to change maybe your teaching style or what you're emphasizing to kind of maybe try and address that issue. And again, you would do this at pretest, do it at post-test, and find out how things change over time, right? So this is how I use it, but it literally could be anything. So this is how you would count stuff, and this is how you would find percentages. All right. Yeah.
Or Rachel Chapman has a question. She asked if she can use this process on the numerical values.
Yes, so like counting numerical values instead of counting words. Is that the question? That's the question. Yeah, absolutely. So literally, whatever goes in between the quotations is what it's going to go look for. So if I had this as numerical data, like I'm going to show you that in the next activity. So let's say never was a 1. If I had to count for how many times 1 showed up, then it would go and find all the 1s. So yeah, great question. Yeah, it can look for both words and numbers essentially. A little advanced trick as well, if you throw in an asterisk, it will go and look for a cell that includes the word never. So without the asterisk, it has to literally say never and nothing else, and nothing more and nothing less. If I use asterisks, it'll go look for the word never. So I use this, for example, there's a question about like, I exercise 3 more times per week for 30 minutes each time. And it's a big, long phrase. And I don't want to type that big, long phrase in my quotes. So I'll just do asterisk. I'll look for one word and it'll go find where that one word shows up and count the entire incident. So you can use that to get around typing lots of stuff in there. All right, let's look at kind of the next phase. This is kind of a progression on the find and replace that Debbie showed you. So again, find and replace is a way to literally just go look for something in Excel and replace it with a different value. So I use it a lot when I change words into numbers. So if I want to do some math on this stuff, then I need to have things in number form. So for example, here's basically the same data set. So let's say I have a code book where never equals 0, rarely equals 1, sometimes equals 2, frequently equals 3, and always equals 4, right? So this is my code, and I need to change all those words into those numbers. So I'm going to use find and replace to do that. So to do that, I'm going to highlight the ranges of what I want to look for and replace data in. That's basically all of column A and all of column B. And so if you were at Debbie's, you can either right click to get into your menu, or up here in the ribbon, kind of the main home ribbon, you get this find and select option. So I'm going to choose the replace option, and I get a little pop-up window. Okay, so find what and replace with what. So where's my code? Okay, so I want it to find the word never and replace it with 0. And I want to do that for everything, for all of them. So here we go. All right, so it did that 7 times. And I want to code rarely, spell it right, always helps, with a 1, replace all of those. And there were 11 of those. And let's see what's my next code sometimes. Code that as a 2, right? Great. Frequently. Code that as a 3. And then finally, we're going to code always as a 4. And there we go. All right. So now I've converted all of those words into data, into numerical numbers that I can now go and do stuff with. Great. All right. So let's do something with those. So here is kind of a sample data set that I just grabbed from my work, from the main spreadsheet. All right, so the blue questions are from the pretest, and the post questions are from the post-test. So, and these are participants, which we should probably tell you. So, yeah, oops, don't go that way, go this way. So again, A, B, C, and so on. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to see what their improvement was from the first day of class to the last day of class. Again, there are 4 sessions in diabetes class, and span out over a month. So we want to see how their behavior has changed over a month or a few months. So if this makes sense to you, literally we're going to get their value on the post-test and subtract their value from the pre-test. So again, if you remember, 0 was what? 0 was never, and 3 was frequently. So this person, participant A, when they first started the program, before they took the first class, they said they never eat 3 servings of dairy products in a day. And after the final class, after they learned about dairy products for someone who's diabetic, they now frequently eat 3 servings of dairy products in a day. So I can see visually that's an improvement. That's awesome. But I need to find out quickly how many of them improved and overall what proportion of the class improved. So over here, I'm going to do some post calculations. So here is the dairy and here is the sugary beverages, right? So these are, so again, pre-test, post-test, and then the difference essentially, right? So back to my formulas that we learned about 40 minutes ago. We're going to do dairy post-test minus dairy pre-test. All right, awesome. So 3. So that went from frequently, or from never to frequently. That's great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy that for all of the participants. And there you go. So again, it makes sense, right? If the number is positive, that means they increase their frequency. If the number is 0, that means they stayed the same. So this person, they sometimes got 3 servings of dairy before, and afterwards they still sometimes got 3 servings of dairy. So they didn't really improve their dairy intake. If there's a negative, that means they now do it less frequently. So not an ideal situation, but it does happen. So again, they said that they frequently get 3 servings of dairy. By the end of the class, they rarely got 3 servings of dairy. So who knows if that was the class, if that was a change in lifestyle, if that was a change in budget, shopping patterns, whatever it was. Regardless, they now drink 3 servings less frequently. And now the sugary formula is exactly the same thing. So we're basically just going to copy this and drag it over and let go. And now we have data for sugary beverages post minus pre. Here's a situation where negative is good, right? So if they go down in frequency, that's what we want to see, because we know that sugary beverages are by and large bad for people, especially those who are diabetic. All right, so just like that, we now can see who went up, who went down, and who stayed the same for dairy intake and sugar. So this gives us individual data, but I want to kind of know this class. How do they do? Who went up, who went down, who stayed the same? So we're going to pull our count functions back out. And we're going to count numbers. All right, so let's use Countif again, right? All right, so let's make this first row an increase in frequency. So as we just talked about, anything that's a positive number, anything above 0 is an increase in frequency. So I want it to count the range. This is our range, right? Now the condition, the criteria is going to be anything above 0, right? So you can do that by doing this. With the old greater than less than symbol, right? Why not? So now it's going to go and it's going to look for something that's greater than 0. And it gives us an answer of 7. So in that data set of 15 people, 7 of them have a positive number, which means 7 of them increase their frequency from pre-test to post-test as far as dairy consumption goes. So we, of course, want to copy this, right? And check for who stayed the same and who decreased, just to be thorough. All right, so let's pull this down and we'll copy our ranges. Yeah, I don't want you to move. I don't want you to be a hand. I want you to be interesting. All right, well, for some reason, it wants to be difficult. Okay, we'll do it the old-fashioned way, copy and paste. All right, so this is going to be not greater than 0. This is going to be equal to 0. So who is equal to 0? Who stayed the same across the board from pre-test to post-test? And then finally, let's flip this greater than and make it a less than. And now who was negative? All right, 7 folks increased, 6 stayed the same, and 2 decreased their frequency. So we can literally grab this and pull this over to here too. And we'll just copy and paste. Great. All right. The mirror image. All right. So as you can see, frequency of consumption of sugary beverages, 6 people decreased their consumption and 7 stayed the same. So that's good. 2 reported increasing, which isn't great, but overall the class did pretty awesome. And then from here, I could obviously calculate percentages, right? So I could take this, divide it by how many responses there are, and get a percentage of consumption. Super simple. All right. So I have 8 minutes, which is just enough time to kind of do our last task, which is an if-then statement. So if-then is a logical statement that says if something is true, then show a particular word or value or something. So you're literally writing a logical statement. If this is true, then do this. If it's false, then do this. So an example I have here, again, A1C scores. Again, not a clinician, but Google tells me that if you have an A1C score of 6.5 or higher, then you could be considered diabetic, or it's one of the signs of being diabetic. So here I have a whole list of continuous data from people and their A1C scores before the class started. So I want a quick snapshot of who is at 6.5 or higher and who is below 6.5. So essentially who is diabetic and who is not diabetic. So I'm going to take a continuous variable and turn it into a categorical variable, essentially. So let's start writing some sentences. All right. So this is just called if. So it's my if function. All right. So as you can see, if logical test, if it is true, then return this value. If it's false, then return this value. So if A2 is greater than or equal to 6.5, then do something if it's true. And if it's true, I want it to say what? Let's just have it say diabetic, just to make it simple. Comma. If it's false, I want it to say, I don't know, not diabetic, just to be super straightforward here. All right, let's look at this real quick. So again, my logical test is if this cell right next to me is greater than or equal to 6.5, then return, if it's true, diabetic. If it's false, not diabetic. And it found a typo, but it corrected it for me, so that was nice. Okay, so not diabetic is what came back. I want a space in there, okay. Great, because we know 5.8 is less than 6.5, right? Perfect. Let's go ahead and just grab this and pull this entire if-then statement all the way down and let go. And there you go. So just like that, I can now see quickly who's diabetic, who's not diabetic. And so the next logical step, if you had a whole bunch of these and you wanted to find out what percentage was diabetic, you could now go and do the count if function and count all the diabetics and then calculate a percentage of all of your participants and find that out quickly. So that is that. And if you remember from Debbie's section a couple days ago, you could put some conditional formatting on this maybe, right? And you could make all of, if it says diabetic, maybe it turns green or it turns red or something like that based on what pops out. All right, so one more thing. I'm going to show you how to do this using the add function, which in some ways is easier, if not always. I just always hand done formulas. So, but if we go back up here to the formulas ribbon, we go back to the insert function, and we go back over to here, we can now search for the if function. So again, it tells you everything you need to know down here in the fine print. And if I insert the function, over in the formula builder on the right side, this lovely little fill in the blank pops up. So if you're intimidated about typing this thing out by hand, this or any function, the function builder literally has you go step by step and fill it out over here on the right side, and it fills it in for you in the cell. So as you can see, the 3 bits of info it needs are logical test, value if true, and value if false, right? So the logical test, what was that again? That was what? A2 is greater than or equal to 6.5. And if it's true, I want it to say diabetic. And if it's false, I'm going to say not diabetic. So as you can see, as I type it in, it's creating the formula for me over here in the cell. And then I hit the done button, and there it is. So again, everything you can do by hand, you can also do using the formula builder. So whatever you kind of prefer is what you should go and do. All right. Oh, I had one more. Do I have time? I have 1 minute. Great. This is just to show you what's possible with if-then statements. So the last one was literally go and look at one value and give me a word, right? Look at the A1C score and then give me diabetic or not diabetic. But if-then statements can be as complex as you want them to, and they can incorporate lots and lots and lots of different values. So here's one that I did. So we asked people in the post test, which of the 4 classes they came to, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or all of them, or 3 of them, or whatever. And they answer yes or no. So let's say I want to issue a certificate to everybody who passed. And if you didn't pass, if you failed, then you don't get one. So again, there's no pass fail, of course, but it's an easy vernacular to use. So someone's considered passing if they came to all 4 classes. If they came to less than 4 classes, then they would fail. So if you can see up here in this bar, I build an if-then statement with looking at 4 different cells. So if you throw an and in there, so because it's looking at this and this and this and this. So if A2 is yes, B2 is yes, C2 is yes, and D2 is yes, then bring back the word pass. And if not, the word fail. So this is just to show you that, if-thens can be really complex. So if you literally had a whole bunch of different values for somebody in a registration form or in 4-H Online or whatever it is, you could use if-thens to boil down a bunch of different data points into like one definitive category. So super useful for a lot of different things. All right, guys, with that, I am going to stop presenting. We have 2 minutes left. So if there are any questions, I would love to take those now. Silence. That's cool. I mean, that was, in a way, it's silly to give you that much information in 1 hour. It's a bit nuts because that is a whole bunch of different functions to learn all at once. But yeah, so again, the other caveat too with Qualtrics, or the one tip is like, Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend. Like with all these really, really widely used programs in the world, there are people out there who love to talk about it and love to show you how to do stuff. So if you have an idea of what to do, but you're not sure how to do it, obviously I'm available, Debbie's available, T's available, other Qualtrics sort of Excel users are available, but chances are somebody made a YouTube about it and you can follow along really simply and figure it out. So, all right, I think I saw a question from Kay pop in. Is that right?
Yes.
Autofill times in increments of 15 minutes for scheduling interviews or judging times. Wow, that's an awesome question. I love it. With 30 seconds left, you drop a bombshell. Off the top of my head, Kay, I don't know.
Yes, there is a way to do it, Brian.
Thanks,
if
Debbie.
You don't mind me.
Of course there is.
Just to start a column of data like 9:15, 9:30, 9:45, and then copy all 3 of those cells, grab that little copy in the bottom right-hand corner of that cell, copy it down the column, and it'll, like Brian has been saying, Excel is smart. So we'll keep that pattern.
Exactly. So that's a really common Qualtrics Excel trick. If you do days of the week, or if you do intervals of regular things, it should keep that interval the same. I've just never seen it done for blocks of 15 minutes, but theoretically it should work.
Yes.
All right. What's next, Shalise? Where are they off to now?
Well, there is a break from now. And then the last session of the day is workday. So if you didn't go to the first workday session on Thursday, they have another session coming up with the same content just today at, I believe, 11 o'clock, from 11 to 12. And then after that is a closing with Jackie. And then that will conclude our conference for this year. So, but thank you all for attending this session, and I will send out, I'm gonna get the recording of this Zoom. Let me stop now.